Today I'm going to be using the 3 pictures I had left from my last layout and the Pink Paislee Prairie Hill 6x6 paper pad to make a 12x12 layout. So I'm not going to use any 12x12 papers on this layout, just a 6x6 pad. And what I'm doing here is I'm marking 4 inches in from 2 corners of this paper because I'm going to be creating a starburst pattern. And I was just showing you how you can use a ruler to mark your corners in case you don't have a big mat like this. If you do have a big mat like this, you can just line it up and draw a line 4 corners or 4 inches in from either edge. And then also I'm going to connect the 2 corners through that 4-inch piece. And then I connect the other 2 corners, but that doesn't make any sense because all the lines need to cross in that one point there, and I realized my mistake immediately. So now I'm going to fix it. So the next 2 lines I draw are going to be drawn from the corner to that center piece. And then so I don't confuse myself, I'm going to erase that line. And I want to end up with 24 triangles when I'm done. And the reason I want 24 triangles is because I have 12 different patterns of paper in this paper pad. So I can use one of each, so I don't have to worry about 2 of them being next to each other or anything like that. So I just keep dividing the triangles in half. And roughly, it doesn't have to be perfect until I have 24 pieces. And just again making sure everything goes through that center point. And then I just keep making them smaller and smaller until I have the number that I need. And to get 24 pieces, I think you need to draw 24 lines. I don't know. I didn't mark that down. So once I have all my lines drawn, I'm gonna just use a circle, a spellbinder circle as a template, because I don't want to cut them all the way. I'm not cutting them all the way apart. I just want to cut them down part of the way. And then I'm gonna start cutting them. And I'm gonna cut on 2 lines, and then I'm gonna skip. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually numbering the pieces I'm going to cut out so that I don't cut on lines that I don't mean to cut on. So here I'm starting with piece number 1. And I'm cutting it all the way out. And then I'm going to mark on the inside of the circle where each piece will end up. So I know where to glue down the pattern paper pieces. And each of these pieces of cardstock becomes a template, so don't throw them out. You need all of them. And the numbering just helps you keep them straight. So you just keep cutting until you don't have any left. So now I've got the whole thing cut out, and I'm going to show you kind of the idea of how it's going to look on the page, which is like this. Only instead of gray, in between where each of these little pieces goes is going to be pattern paper. And I'm starting with 10 only because 10 is the largest. I want to get it out of the way. And so basically what I do is I'm going to trace the templates upside down on the back of my pattern papers. And then I cut them out like a 1/4 inch on either side of the lines I traced because I need some room to glue them down. And I numbered that one. You don't actually have to number them if you glue them down one at a time, but if you cut them all and then glue them all, then you should number them. It just will make it so much easier. So here I go. Now this is a mistake. I'm gluing mine onto the front of my template instead of the back. It's just an accident. Which is why you don't see a corresponding 10 on the inside of the circle. And I just realized that it's upside down, and I said, oh well, I'll deal with it later. I'm going to cover up that circle anyway, so it doesn't really matter. then I just keep going along, and I have 12 patterns of paper in the collection, so none of them are going to be next to each other. And I'm just trying to arrange them so I don't have two cool ones next to each other. So, for example, I wouldn't want two next to each other that were mostly blue. Or I don't want two warm ones next to each other, so I don't want two next to each other that are mostly yellow-orange. I'm just kind of trying to space the colors out a little bit. And that's pretty much my only philosophy to this. But basically, since it's a 6x6 pad, all of the papers are designed to go together. So there's no problem. You can pretty much arrange them however you want. And I use the lines I drew to line up the pieces on the back. That's how I know where to put it. And so now there's the whole thing. You see there's a hole in the middle because the 6x6 papers don't quite go all the way to the sun. It's no big deal because the photos are going to cover right over that. So I'm just showing you how they look right there in that bottom corner, which is where I intended for them to go originally. But I'm just testing other arrangements. This one I don't like because the colors of the photos are so much more intense in the background. It makes them look heavy, and so they kind of look like they're floating. So I know I won't want the upper left corner either. I tried the bottom left corner, but because my sister's facing towards the left, she's looking out of the page instead of into the page, and I don't like that either. So I'm going to go with the bottom right, which was my original plan. And to unify the starburst page and make it look like one piece instead of a bunch of little pieces, I'm going to go around all of the edges with Distress ink in the color Pumice Stone. And Pumice Stone is a warm gray, and there's a warm gray in this paper collection, so I knew it would match well. And I'm not going too deep. I just want to smooth out the edge so it's not so choppy looking with all the different papers glued up and down on top of each other. And you'll see when I'm done that it kind of just brings the whole thing together and makes it look like one piece of pattern paper and evens out the edges. So now that I've done that, I'm going to glue it down, and I'm going to adhere it to a piece of white cardstock. This whole thing is 11 by 11. And I'm going to adhere it to a piece of 11 1/4 by 11 1/4 white cardstock. And it looks a little creamy. It's not actually creamy, it's yellow. Yellow and white and gray, those all go very well together. So it's really more of yellow than a cream. And normally I don't like white and cream together, and I don't like cream and gray together. Usually it just looks dirty, but since this is is more of a butter yellow color, it works just fine. And there it is. So now it's time to put down my photos, and I'm going to adhere the large photo first, and I'm just using ATG for that. And I just want to make sure it's straight with, since it is so large, I want to make sure it's straight with the outside edges. And then the other two smaller photos are getting adhered with pop dots. And see, I totally covered up my sister in that photo, and that's fine because I covered her up with a picture of herself from the same place. So really what you're just getting out of that larger photo is kind of the scale of the area, because you can see how tiny the people are. And so she didn't need to be seen in two pictures. And then this second photo I'm also adhering with pop dots, and I'm actually going to adhere it a little bit lower down than I originally planned, which is good because it kind of gives an impression of things floating up and away, which is nice. So to reinforce the impression of things floating up and away, and also to soften all of the straight lines in this layout, I'm putting these buttons, and they're also they're not buttons, they're circles, from the Pink Paislee Prairie Hill collection. So they have all the same patterns as the papers. And I'm just going to arrange them so that they're floating up and away along the same line as the photos. And also, I'm putting them on so they cut across lines and corners and things. And that's going to really help the whole project look less linear and less graphic. Although it's still going to look pretty graphic and linear. So because I've messed with these and picked them up and put them down and picked them up and put them down over and over again, I'm actually going to go ahead and put them on with Scotch Quick Dry because I don't trust their adhesive anymore. And I often will do this with adhesive chipboard elements from manufacturers because I find that the adhesive on these chipboard elements is not really sufficient for the long haul. And you'll often find when you go back through your albums that they're kind of all in the bottom of the page protector where they fell down. I do the same thing with thickers, chipboard letters, all that kind of stuff. Anything chipboard. So now I have some stickers from the collection I want to use because I want to bring some of this red color in, and I want to bring it in 3 places. But I'm not sure which 3 places I want for sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually sticking these stickers to one of the yellow pieces, which I don't need anymore. If you want to make a template of this project so you don't have to draw the lines every time, the best way to do it would be to trace the finished piece once all the pieces are cut out of it. Because you're always going to have to cut new pieces out of any cardstock you use. There's no reason to save the cardstock pieces. You can just use them as scraps. So what I've done there is there's a badge or like a ribbon in the collection. And I wanted just the circle piece of it. I didn't want to use it as a prize ribbon. So I ripped off the tails, and now I'm gluing the button, the spool label sticker to the badge, or I don't know what you call those ribbons, I guess, prize ribbons. And I'm replacing one of the circles with it. And it was looking a little flat compared to the other 2 circles, so I'm going to go and put a brad through the center. And I'm just going to punch a hole with my 1/8 inch hole punch. And then I'm going to set my brad with the We Are Memory Keepers brad setter. And this gets the brads nice and flat. So I could adhere it directly on the page if I wanted to, but I actually don't. I want to put it up on pop dots. It was originally on dimensional adhesive, so I want to keep that dimension. And then you see over there on the right of the screen, I have the little tails hanging out. I'm actually going to use them on the layout too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere them next to this Hobbit house, and then I'm going to adhere the arrow over it so that it is pointing to the Hobbit house, just to draw attention to it because it's pretty tiny. And because that photo is on foam adhesive, the arrow also needs to be on foam adhesive. Otherwise it'll bend in the middle. And so I'm just putting regular adhesive on the part of it that's going to be on the photo, and then foam adhesive on the part of it that's not going to be on the photo, and that way it'll lay flat. And then I just play around with where I think I want this bright sunshiny day badge for a while, and I end up sliding it under the photo and under the flare piece or prize ribbon piece or whatever. And so I just add adhesive to the back of it because it's not a sticker anymore, and slide it right under there. And that works great. So now I'm just gonna do my journaling, and I chose a gray marker for that. I wanted a warm gray marker, but I didn't think about I have the pumice stone marker from the distress markers, which would have been perfect, but I didn't think about it until after I'd already done the journaling. But I do use that marker for something later. And then when I finished the journaling, I didn't like how that space in the upper right was open, so I just tossed the date in there to fill it out. So now what I'm doing is I'm adhering down my chipboard letters, my thickers, and they're, again, I'm using the quick dry for them, and they're the exact same butter yellow color as the background. So I'm thinking I want to outline them with the pumice stone marker, which is the same ink I used to outline the paper, or to distress the edges of the paper, just so they have a shadow. And I'll often outline letter stickers if they look a little too flat or blend in too much. So I just put the Z on a piece of the scrap paper to test how it looked, to make sure I would like it before I committed to it, because once you start you can't stop, and I liked it just fine. So I went ahead and did that and outlined all the letters. And then I didn't show this on camera, and it's not, I do it after I finish filming, but I also do the same thing with all the yellow sun rays on the paper. So here's the layout, the journaling, the buttons, and everything with these photos. So all 6x6 pads. Thanks for watching.